Hi everyone, I'm Jody, the designer behind Lambent Crochet, and in this tutorial I'm going to be walking you through the process on how I crocheted the Lucy's Diamonds crop sweater. We're going to first start out by working the ribbed collar, then continuing on with the raglan style yoke, followed by the Bavarian stitch edging, which is a beautiful textured stitch that really offers a great opportunity to showcase pops of color. Then we'll be joining our yarn to work the sleeve and finishing off with the ribbed cuff. Now, this pattern does have two sleeve options. You can either do a short sleeve or a long sleeve, but for this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how I worked up the long sleeve. Here are the supplies I'll be using to make my Lucy's Diamonds crop sweater. I'll be working with Paintbox Yarn's Simply Chunky. It's a category 5 bulky weight yarn, but I find it is a little on the thinner side for a bulky weight. So keep that in mind when choosing your yarn. I'll be pairing it with a 6mm crochet hook, but be sure to check your gauge swatch so you can use the hook that matches gauge. This is optional. You can use 4 stitch markers to help you when segregating the body from the shoulders. A pair of scissors. Now I do recommend using a very sharp pair of scissors, as dull blades will cause your ends to fray when you're snipping, making a mess when weaving in. And the last item is a measuring tape. Now I use this to determine how long I'd like my sleeves, and it's also really handy to use in case you wanted to adjust the length of the body. So we're first going to begin by working up the collar. So go ahead and place a slip knot on your crochet hook and make a chain of 12. Okay, now we're going to be working in the second chain from the hook. So there's 1 and 2. Now make a slip stitch and then make a slip stitch in every chain down the row. So you're going to have a total of 11 stitches. Now be sure that you're loosening your tension slightly when working these slip stitches, or else you're going to have difficulties when you're working your next row. At the end of your row, chain 1 and turn your work. So to give you a better idea of where we're going to be working our stitches, I'm just going to rotate my work so the top of my stitches are facing the camera. Now when you're normally working your crochet stitches, you go under both loops of the V, like so. But in order to achieve this ribbing effect for the collar, we're going to be working in the back loop only. So working in the same stitch as the turning chain, make your very first slip stitch back loop only, and then continue to work a slip stitch in the back loop only down the row of stitches. At the end of the row, you're going to want to chain 1 and turn your work. And just another reminder to keep your tension slightly more relaxed while working the collar, or else you're going to have difficulties working these rows. So for the remainder of the collar, you're going to want to just repeat row 2 the number of times it states in the pattern. Now I'm just going to fast forward ahead until my collar is completed, and then I'm going to meet you back here to show you how we're going to be joining the first row worked to the last row, as we're going to be working in the round for the remainder of this pattern. So this is what my collar looks like when I finish all of my rows. So it does resemble knit, and it has a beautiful stretch that holds its shape very, very well. Now to continue working in the round, we're going to be joining the first row to the last row work. So go ahead and chain 1, then turn your work, and now fold the very first row underneath the last row worked. So you're going to be folding it in half with the last row worked on top of the very first row. Now when joining the rows together, we're going to be working in the front loop only of the last row work, then on the bottom side of the first row worked. So you're going to insert your hook into the very first stitch, front loop only, and immediately go into the bottom side of the first stitch of the first row worked, and then make your slip stitch. Now go ahead and do this all the way down the rows, and be sure that you're going through every stitch consecutively, not to miss any, or else you're going to have holes in your seam. Now I'm going to go ahead and jump forward to show you how we're going to be working the next part of the collar. So once you have both rows joined, chain 1 and then turn to work along the bottom edge of the collar. So here's what your collar is going to look like once you've joined the both rows. Now you're going to have a raised seam on one side and a flattened, more hidden seam on the other. Now it's your preference as to what you prefer, if you prefer having the raised seam showing or the flattened seam, but for this pattern I'm going to be working with the flat side facing the right side out. So the raised part of the seam is going to be tucked in on the wrong side, so you won't be seeing that. So I'm just going to flip my work to be facing right side out, and I'm going to chain 1. Now we're going to be working along the edge of the collar, working single crochets in between the ridges. So you're going to want to make 1 single crochet for every row that you made, but place them in between the ridges. So your very first single crochet is going to be placed right underneath your chain 1. Then you're going to skip over the ridge and work 2 single crochets along the edge. Then skip over the next ridge and work another 2 single crochets along the edge. And you're going to do this all the way around your collar. So I'm just going to fast forward and meet you back here when I have one last stitch to complete along my edge, as I'm going to be showing you how to perform a color change, because my collar is going to be a different color than my yoke. Okay, so I'm going to be working my very last single crochet along the bottom edge of the collar, but I'm stopping halfway through my single crochet stitch because I'll be doing a color change. Since in this particular sweater, I'm going to be working a different color for the yoke. So I'm just going to do my quick color change here, complete my single crochet stitch with the new color, and then locate the very first stitch made and join with a slip stitch. Now to help secure your color change, just give your tails a quick pull to tighten up. And now this is what my collar looks like with the bottom edge completed. So next we're going to be moving on to the yoke portion of the pattern. So begin working the yoke by chaining up 2. And now turn your work. So now you're going to begin by working a number of double crochet stitches followed by a chain 2. Now that chain 2 space is going to be mapping out where the body and the shoulders begin and end. It will also be showing you where we're going to be placing our increases throughout the yoke. So go ahead and complete the number of double crochets stated in the pattern for the size you are working. Now this section of double crochets are going to be part of the back. So continue working the double crochets until you have the amount stated in your pattern, and then you're going to be doing a chain of 2. So here I've completed the amount of double crochets needed, and I'm chaining up 2, and then working in the next stitch, I'm going to continue doing the amount of double crochets it states in the pattern. Now, this portion of double crochets is for the shoulder. Now I'm going to be chaining 2, which marks the end of the shoulder and the beginning of the front of the chest. So now I'm going to go ahead and continue on with my double crochet stitches. And I'm going to fast forward here because there are quite a few stitches that need to be made to do the whole length of the chest. So I'm going to meet you back here to show you where we're going to be mapping out our next shoulder. Okay, so now I'm chaining up 2, which is marking off the end of the chest and beginning the other shoulder. So now I'm going to continue on making my double crochets for this shoulder. And then I'm just going to fast forward a bit to show you how we're going to be marking off this shoulder as well. So here I'm chaining up 2, marking off the end of the shoulder, and I'm going to finish off with the last half of the back. So I'm just going to double crochet all the way down this section, and then I'm going to be joining to the very first stitch made with a slip stitch. So be sure that you join with a slip stitch to the first stitch and not the chain 2. So right in here to the first stitch, I'm joining with a slip stitch, and now I'm going to chain up 2 and turn my work. Now for round 2, begin by making a double crochet in the next stitch and continue working a double crochet in every stitch, stopping at the chain 2 space. So now I'm just So now I've made all my double crochet stitches until I've reached the chain 2 space. So this is where we're going to be doing our increases. So make a double crochet into that chain 2 space, then chain 2, and make 1 more double crochet in the chain 2 space. Now working in the next stitch, make a double crochet, and continue working a double crochet in every stitch until you reach the next chain 2 space. So to show you one more time how to do the increases, you're going to be working in the chain 2 space, making a double crochet, then chain 2, and work another double crochet. Then continue working in the very next stitch, make a double crochet and work double crochets in every stitch until you reach the next chain 2 space. Repeat these steps for the next 2 corners, so the next 2 chain 2 spaces. And when you reach the first stitch, join with a slip stitch, then chain 2, and repeat the same steps as round 2 for the remaining rounds of the yoke. So here's a look at what your yoke should be looking like at the end of round 3. All of your chain 2 spaces should be lined up nicely, and your yoke should start resembling the shape of a rectangle. So now I have all my rounds of the yoke completed. So the next step of the pattern is going to be working the body, where we're going to segregate the shoulders from the chest and the back. So if you find this section of the pattern a little bit confusing, or you're a little bit nervous to start sectioning off the yoke to work the body, feel free to add some stitch markers to the first and last stitches of the shoulder sections. So you'll be placing your stitch markers to the stitches on the side of the shoulder that are right next to the chain 2 spaces. Having these 4 stitches marked off are really going to be helpful to remind you not to work in those stitches while you're sectioning off the body from the shoulders. And they'll also be very helpful when it's time to work the sleeves. Okay, so let's begin the first round of the body. So go ahead and work a double crochet in every stitch until you reach the chain 2 space. So here I'm working my very last double crochet before reaching the chain 2 space. So I'm going to ignore the chain 2 space completely and now work the number of chains stated in the pattern for the armpit area. So then I'm going to skip over all of the stitches of the shoulder as well as that chain 2 space. And then I'm going to work in the next stitch and just continue to make a double crochet in every stitch until I reach the next chain 2 space. So here I am working the very last double crochet of the front of the body. And now I'm going to fold my work and then do my chains for the armpit and then work into the next stitch along the body. So skipping over all of the shoulder stitches as well as the chain 2 space, and then continue to work the remaining double crochet stitches until I reach the very first stitch. Okay, so now I'm working the very last double crochet, and then I'm going to be joining to the first stitch with a slip stitch, and then I'm going to chain 2 and turn my work. So to work this next round of the body, you're going to chain 2 and then make a double crochet in the next stitch, and continue making a double crochet in every stitch until you reach the series of chains you made for the armpit area. Now, when you reach those chain stitches, I want you to treat them the same as every other stitch of the round. So when I was sectioning off my shoulders to the body, I added 3 additional chains. So I'm going to be working a double crochet in each one of those chain stitches. And then I'm just going to continue working a double crochet in the remaining stitches of the body. And when I reach the next section of chains, I'm going to be working a double crochet in each one of those chains. So again, followed by double crochets in the remaining stitches of the pattern, and then joining with a slip stitch to the very first stitch. So I've joined my round, and now I just wanted to give you a look to see how things are shaping up. So there's a little bit more structure to the body now with that additional round. Now for the remaining rounds of the body, you're just going to be doing a double crochet in every single stitch of the round, then joining to the very first stitch with a slip stitch to close it off. Though I'd like to mention, depending on the size you're working, the very last round of the body may include either double crochet increases or double crochet decreases. So if you're unfamiliar with how to do a decrease or an increase, I suggest that you take a look at some videos to familiarize yourself with it. They're pretty simple. All you're doing for an increase is doing 2 double crochets in the same stitch. And for a double crochet decrease, you're just doing 2 double crochets together. Now I'm just going to go ahead and complete the remaining rounds of the body, and then I'm going to meet you back here when it's time to work on the Bavarian stitch edging. Before you begin working the Bavarian stitch edging, you want to make sure you're working right side out. Then chain 1 and then make a single crochet in the next stitch. Now you're going to be working up a shell, so you're going to skip 2 stitches, and then in the 3rd stitch, you're going to be working 3 double crochets, followed by a chain 1, and then another 3 double crochets. Now this is all in that same stitch. So here's my 3rd double crochet. Now I'm going to chain 1 and work 3 more double crochets, all in the same stitch. Now I'm going to skip 2 stitches and make a single crochet in the next. And this is our shell stitch. Now to show you one more time, we're going to skip 2 stitches, and then working in the next stitch, we're going to make our shell. So 3 double crochets, then chain 1, and another 3 double crochets in the same stitch. Now we're going to skip 2 stitches and work a single crochet in the next. Repeat this all the way around, replacing the very last single crochet with a slip stitch to the very first stitch made. Now chain 1 to cut your yarn and tie off. Now to begin the second round of the Bavarian stitch edging, you're going to join your yarn to any one of the chain 1 spaces, so the center of the shell. I like to keep my joins close to the back seam. Feel free to join your yarn any way you'd like. The way I like to do it is tie a knot and then wrap my yarn around my hook, going into the stitch, or in this case around the chain 1 space. Pull up a loop, grab the yarn, then pull through both loops on my hook. This just avoids doing the chain 1 and the single crochet. Now this next section is a little bit tricky, so I'm going to slow things down. You're going to yarn over and go around the back post of the next double crochet. Pull up a loop. So now you're going to have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and only pull through 2 loops, leaving 2 loops on your hook. Then yarn over, go around the back post of the next double crochet, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops on your hook, leaving 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, go around the back post of the next double crochet, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops on your hook, leaving 4 loops on your hook. Now go into the next half of the next shell. Go around the back post of the double crochet, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops on your hook, leaving 5 loops on your hook. Yarn over, go around the back post of the next double crochet, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops on your hook, leaving 6 loops on your hook. Yarn over, go around the back post of the next double crochet, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops on your hook. Now you have 7 loops on your hook. Now you're going to yarn over and pull through all 7 loops. Now you're going to chain 1 to close and then chain 2 more. Then make a single crochet in the next chain 1 space. And this is how your back post double crochet 6 together will look like. Now I just wanted to show you one more time because I know it can be very tricky to learn this stitch. So you're going to yarn over, go around the back post of the double crochet, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops only, leaving 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, go around the back post of the next double crochet, grab the yarn, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops on your hook only, leaving 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, go around the back post of the next double crochet, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2 loops. Then into the next shell, you're going to yarn over, go around the back post of the double crochet, grab the yarn, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, go around the back post of the next double crochet, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, then yarn over, go around the back post of the next double crochet, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Now you'll have 7 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over and pull through all 7 loops. You're going to chain 1 to close. And now chain 2 more. Then single crochet into that next chain 1 space. And you're going to repeat this all the way around, replacing the last single crochet of the chain 1 space with a slip stitch to the very first stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and complete this round, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to join to the first stitch. So after making my chain of 3, I'm going to be joining with a slip stitch to the very first stitch made, so that first single crochet. And now I'm not going to cut my yarn and tie off. We're going to be continuing on in the same color for round 3. So chain 1 and make a single crochet in that same stitch. Now locate that little circle that you see right there in the center of the back post double crochet 6 together. It's where you made the chain 1 to close up those 6 stitches. So you're going to yarn over and insert your hook into that little opening and make a double crochet. And now you're going to be working that shell stitch into that little opening. So go ahead and make 3 double crochets followed by a chain 1. And then work another 3 double crochets into that same opening. So that's what it's going to look like when it's completed. And then you're going to make a single crochet into that single crochet stitch right here. So here's what the shell stitch looks like when worked in the back post double crochet 6 together. Now I want to show you one more time, and if you find that you're having a hard time working into that little opening, go ahead and insert your crochet hook and slide it a couple times just to open it up just a little bit more. So you're going to work 3 double crochets into that little opening. So in the opening of the chain 1 that you made to close off the back post 6 double crochet together, then you're going to do a chain 1 and work another 3 double crochets into that same opening. Then you're going to secure the shell by making a single crochet in the next single crochet stitch. And then repeat the step all the way around, replacing the last single crochet with a slip stitch to the very first stitch. So I just wanted to quickly show you what it looks like when you're closing off this round. So I have my last shell completed, and now I'm locating the very first stitch made, inserting my hook and making a slip stitch. And now I'm going to chain 1, cut my yarn and tie off, because no matter if you're changing colors or working in one solid color, you're going to have to cut your yarn and tie off at the end of every round of shells. So now I'm going to go ahead and repeat round 2 and round 3 for a total of 2 more times each. So there's going to be 4 more rounds made. And then I'm going to show you how I finish off with the back post single crochet edging. So here I have all 7 rounds of the Bavarian stitch edging completed, and now I'm going to be showing you how I worked the edging of the final round of shell stitches. So it's going to be a combination of back post single crochet and single crochet. So we're going to begin by joining to any chain 1 space of the shell. So we're going to be doing a single crochet into that space, or do a chain 1, then a single crochet, depending on how you prefer to join your yarn. And now you're going to be working individual back post single crochets into these double crochets of the shell. So wrap your hook around the back post of the double crochet, grab the yarn, pull up a loop so there's 2 loops on your hook. Now yarn over and pull through those 2 loops. And again, repeat that for the next 2 double crochet stitches. So go around the back post and make your single crochet. Now one more time, go around the back post, grab the yarn, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through both loops on your hook. So there you just made 3 back post single crochets, and now make a single crochet into the single crochet stitch. Now in the next 3 double crochets, work a back post single crochet in each one of those stitches. Okay, now the last one. And now we're at the chain 1 space, and we're just going to do a single crochet into that chain 1 space. So this is what it's going to look like. It's going to continue on showcasing the detail of the Bavarian stitch, but adding like a nice border to finish everything off. So continue on making your back post single crochets and single crochet stitches all the way around your last round of the edging. And once you reach the very last stitch, I'm just going to show you how to join and tie everything off. So I'm just going to fast forward ahead and meet you back when I'm ready to join to the very first stitch. Okay, so I've just completed my last back post single crochet stitch, And now I'm at the very first single crochet made, so I'm going to insert my hook and make a slip stitch, then chain 1, cut my yarn and tie off. And now my final round of edging is complete, and this is how it's gonna look. Now the next part of the pattern, we're gonna be working the sleeves. So to begin, lay your sweater down with the back side facing you. And locate that stitch marker that you see there. So it's a stitch marker that's right before the chain 2 space. That's where we're going to be joining our yarn. So into that stitch next to the chain 2 space, join your yarn. Remove that stitch marker. Insert your hook and chain up 2. Now this chain 2 is not going to count as a stitch. Now we're going to be working in the chain 2 space, the post of the double crochet of row 1 of the body and the first stitch of the additional chains. So we're going to be doing 3 double crochets together. So the first double crochet is going to begin in the chain 2 space. The second will be around the double crochet post made from the last double crochet worked of round 1 of the body. And then the third is going to be into the very first stitch of the armpit. So that first chain made when doing the additional chains. Now yarn over and pull through all the loops on your hook, and all those 3 stitches are going to count as 1. Now for the size that I'm working up, I'm only going to be making 1 more double crochet into that group of extra chains made for the armpit. And now I'm going to be doing another set of 3 double crochets together. So working backwards, I'm going to begin with the last stitch of the additional chains made for the armpit. So I'm going to start my first double crochet into the next stitch here. And only going to complete that halfway. Then work around the double crochet post from round 1 of the body. And then the last of the 3 is worked into the chain 2 space of the corner. Then yarn over and pull through all the loops on your hook. And those 3 equal 1 stitch. Now I'm removing the stitch marker in the next stitch. And now I'm going to continue working a double crochet in every stitch. Now my very last double crochet is going to be into the same stitch as the starting chain 2. So I'm going to go ahead and finish these double crochets, and I'm going to meet you back here to show you how I join the very first round of the sleeve. So just to show you where you're going to be working your very last double crochet, it's going to be in that same stitch that we joined our yarn to. So I'm just going to work my very last double crochet here and now join to that first stitch, which is a double crochet 3 together with a slip stitch. Now you're going to chain 2, turn your work, and you're ready to begin round 2 of the sleeve. So round 2 and the remaining rounds of the sleeve, you'll just be working a double crochet in every stitch and then joining to the very first stitch with a slip stitch. Now in this pattern, you have 2 variations for sleeve lengths. There's short sleeve as well as long sleeve. Now I'm going to be working up the long sleeve version of this pattern, but both versions do end off with the same type of cuff. So I'm just going to jump ahead to show you how we're going to be working the cuffs now. So I have 1 stitch left to work in my sleeve, so I'm going to be working the double crochet, but only finishing halfway through because I'm going to be doing a color change. So I'm going to be dropping my working yarn and now picking up the yarn I'm going to be using for the cuff, finishing off that double crochet stitch, and then joining to the very first stitch with a slip stitch. Now to begin the cuff, you're going to chain up 7. Now working in the second chain from the hook, we're going to be making a slip stitch. Continue to work a slip stitch in every stitch down the row of chains, so you're going to have a total of 6 slip stitches. And now working in the next 2 stitches along the sleeve, you're going to be making a slip stitch in each one of those stitches. Be sure you do not include these 2 slip stitches in your stitch counts. So now you're going to turn your work. Do not make a turning chain. And we're going to be skipping over those slip stitches and going directly back into the stitches made in that row of chains. So working in the back loop only, you're going to be making a slip stitch in that very last stitch made of your row of slip stitches. And then you're going to continue to work a slip stitch back loop only in the remaining 5 stitches of the cuff. Now chain 1 and turn. So working in the same stitch as the turning chain, we're going to be doing another slip stitch back loop only and continue working a slip stitch back loop only in the next 5 stitches. So you're going to have a total of 6 stitches made. Again, be careful with your tension. You want to keep your tension slightly looser, or else you're going to have a very difficult time getting your hook into the stitches and your cuffs are going to be incredibly tight. Now, if you find your cuffs are too tight, working the slip stitch back loop only, you can substitute it for a single crochet back loop only. So again, working in the next 2 stitches along the sleeve, you're going to be joining the cuff with 2 slip stitches. Now those stitches do not count in our stitch counts. And then you turn your work and work directly into the slip stitch back loop only stitches. So continue to make a slip stitch back loop only in every one of those stitches along the cuff. So you're always going to have a total of 6 stitches for each row of the cuff. So you're not including the 2 slip stitches that join the cuff to the sleeve. And then at the end of this row, you chain 1 and turn. You only do a turning chain at the very outer edge of the cuff. So now you're just going to repeat those steps until you have a row made for each stitch along the bottom edge of the sleeve. So I'm going to go ahead and complete all my rows of slip stitch back loop only for the cuff, and then I'm going to meet you back here to show you how we join the very first row to the last. So you're going to chain 1 and then fold the very first row to the last row worked with the first row facing you. insert your hook into the very first stitch of the first row. So you're going to be working the underside of the row of stitches, and then you insert your hook directly into the back loop of the last row worked and make a slip stitch. And then continue working this slip stitch in every stitch down both rows. So you go underneath the first row of stitches of the first row made and directly into the back loop of the last row worked and make a slip stitch. Continue this all the way down the rows. Be sure you don't miss any of the stitches or else you're going to have holes in your seam. And once you've worked the slip stitch in every single stitch of both rows, you're going to chain one, cut your yarn, and tie off. Then you're going to repeat the steps for the sleeve and cuff for the other sleeve. Once you have that completed, all that's left to do is weave in your ends, and your Lucy's Diamond sweater is now complete.